Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife Podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well, as well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. Sally Oulton grew up in rural New South Wales, studied at a nearby ag college, and wanted to be a farmer's wife. So how on earth did she end up meeting a king, cooking for a prince, and being chased by pirates on the Red Sea? Now, Sally's incredible stories sound like they've come straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster, and she shares her life adventures in such an easy, matter-of-fact way that it left me saying, wow, far too often during our conversation. Today, Sal's not living or working on the high seas. Instead, she's living a much quieter life with a husband and 2 daughters. Yet, in the past 10 years, she's managed to create and build a thriving business that began with just $4,000 and working from the back of her garage. Now, Sal is a woman who is willing to be brave and take bold action. And our conversation left me wondering what on earth the next few chapters of her life story are going to look like. She is truly an inspirational woman that you cannot help but admire. And I know that this episode of the podcast is going to be a popular one for listeners. So be sure to share it with someone else who would really love it as well. Enjoy our chat. A big welcome to Redefining Midlife Podcast, Sally. It's great to have you here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. We've got a lot to talk about, and I know this is going to be a story that so many women are just going to be hanging on the edge of their seats listening to all of your life adventures. But before we start on all of the things that happened when you were a woman in your 20s and 30s, I really want to bring us back to what life was like growing up for you, because what your childhood was like often forms what the woman we're going to be is like. So tell me more about your childhood growing up and where that happened.
Well, I grew mostly up in Dubbo, country New South Wales. My dad was a general manager for a tractor company and that did broadacre farming. And my mum had a school uniform shop. And I'm the middle child. I've got an older brother and a younger sister. And childhood was idyllic. Yeah, we had a really good, upbringing in a small town at the time. Yeah, so fond memories of going to school and all the good things that happen when you grow up in a country town.
Yeah. Do you ever go back to the country town now? Like, have you got family and friends still living?
Yeah, my mum's still there. So I try and get back once every couple of years. She comes up here a lot because Noosa is more more of a holiday place for her to come to and enjoy and come and see the kids. So so I try and get back once every couple of years. Yeah,
nice.
And try and take the family as well.
Yeah. Can you picture yourself as a child? Because sometimes when I go back to my old hometown, I drive past the house that I grew up in, and I often think,
yes, as soon as you walk into Mum's house, it's you can remember the times of what happened. The animals that we had, the dog and the cockatoos, and and we used to walk to school. My daughter's childhood is very different from mine, so we used to walk and ride to school. Yeah, and we were in the pool every afternoon. As soon as we got home, we were in the pool during summer. So, and then also we would go up the street to lollies from the lolly shop.
Couldn't you buy a lot for 20 cents back then? You'd get 3 for 5 cents or 4 for 5. Yeah, it was amazing what you used to be able to get.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I played hockey and squash and did all the, usual sports and swam and so it was a really happy childhood.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Sal, you were born with a hearing impairment and you've worn hearing aids since the age of 3. I just know that as a teacher of many decades, how we deal with children who have got impairments or difficulties with learning or any sort of disability, how it's catered for now compared to how it was catered for when I first started teaching, let alone when you add on, another decade and a half. So how is it for you growing up?
It had its challenges for sure. It's actually my neighbour that told Mum that she thought I was deaf. It was quite funny. And Mum said, "Oh, no, she's fine." But it occurred that when I did the hearing test that I was lip reading. And
Wow.
I was clever enough to pass all the tests. But when I was 3, they said, yes, I had to wear hearing aids in one ear. And then later in life, it was discovered I was deaf in both ears. So I've been wearing hearing aids since the age of 3. So I don't hear the high pitched sounds. So if I have my hearing aids off and the phone is in another room, I can't hear it ringing. Or I lip read all the time. So if somebody's in another room talking to me, I can hear them, but I don't know what they've said. So I have to go into that room to have that conversation with them and ask them to repeat what they said. Growing up, it definitely had its challenges. I got teased a lot. I was taken out of class to go and to do speech therapy because I couldn't say my R's and some other sounds. So I always remember walking to school and I was probably 10 years old and the year 6 boys was calling me Deafy, Deafy, Deafy. And I remember going home and crying to mum. And mum said, well, next time they say that, just say, huh? What did you say? I didn't hear you. So that's how I overcome that.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, and it's funny, those lessons that I learned from mum back then, I also passed those sort of lessons on to my girls. I remember those really clearly,
Yes.
when I was being teased and how to deal with it. Yeah.
Yep. So it's almost turning what you've got. And I've said that to you before, that having dealt with what you've dealt with as a young child with having a hearing impairment, it's given you that tenacity, it's given you that resilience and probably courage to try things that maybe other people wouldn't. So in one way, it's been almost like a superpower and a gift for you.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely. Absolutely. Always been, you have to try and prove yourself to overcome it. I always hid it when I was a child. I didn't like being pointed out that I was, I wore hearing aids and I was deaf. I didn't
You don't want to
enjoy
be
that at
different, do
all.
you? That's it as a kid.
And I hated being pulled out of class. But yeah, I just couldn't say some words because I simply just weren't hearing them.
Yes.
I mean, the hearing aids that we have today are completely different to the hearing aids that I had growing up. They're amazing technology today.
Yes.
So I can listen to music from my phone into my hearing aids. I can answer calls with my hearing aids if I wanted to.
Really?
There's so many different things. Yeah, so I go to the gym and walk on the walking machine and just push play. I don't have AirPods. I've got hearing aids. So yeah,
That's amazing.
technology has come a long way. And instead of the wax sort of molds that we were given, you used to make your ears sweat all the time. These hearing aids today, we don't have that issue either. So.
And now tell me, now we were talking about that. I think I put the word superpower in somewhere, but being able to lip read, mate, that would be a very handy superpower.
Sometimes it has come in handy. Yeah. Yeah. So I can look across the room at a restaurant and, gauge what people are talking about.
Yeah. So you could use it for good or evil, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was your dreams and, the big dreams that you might have had and ambitions that you had when, you were in your late teens or early 20s? What did you imagine your life was going to look like?
Well, I always was somebody that wrote my goals down. And I found a list probably about 4 or 5 years ago in my drawer of a list of 30 things I wanted to do in my life when I was 18.
Oh,
And I've always been one of those people to write down, set goals because my dad, he was very much a person who instilled goals and had affirmation cards. I still have his affirmation cards today. So it was interesting to look back. I think when you write things down and you look at them regularly, those things would happen for you because it's in your subconscious.
That's right.
Yeah. So there were a lot of dreams that have those goals have been achieved for sure. Yeah. There's still a few on there, but I've given up on those, like learning the piano. I just don't have that ability.
Yeah.
Or learning another language. I'm not very good at that because of my hearing. I just don't pick up that naturally. Yeah.
Yeah.
But definitely traveling the world, all the different countries that I wanted to go to, I've been to. So I think it's a really good tool to have and I still write down my dreams.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And it's one of those things where I think you look back in some of the dreams and you think, well, you're either going to do it or you're going to dump it. So what are you going? If you choose to do it, work towards it, and if you choose to dump it, then replace it with a new dream.
Something else. Another one. Another goal. So I've always been a goal orientated. Yeah.
Brilliant. And what did you see yourself doing? Did you want to stay where you were? Did you like you talked about, you had listed down a number of countries?
Yeah, well, I definitely wanted to travel.
Yes.
When I left school, I went to Sydney, did a travel course. And then when I finished the course, I could type really well. And then I applied for a job and it was paying 13,000 a year. And I just rang mum and said, I can't live in Sydney on 13,000 a year. She said, well, that was a waste of money then, come home. So I came back to Dubbo and I applied to go to Orange Ag College. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll marry a farmer. I want to live on the land. So I went to Orange Ag and I had a great couple of years, but I met another guy that wasn't, from the land, and I ended up being engaged to him, and then that all fell apart, and then I took off and left overseas.
Yeah.
And so for the next couple of years, from the age of 21 to 26, I was just wandering, really. I was coming to him from overseas. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then I just fell in love with food for some reason and started having dinner
How
parties.
did that start, Sal? Like, I'm really interested in where that
Yeah,
passion
I don't know. I just started dining out, and I wasn't really interested in food when I was growing up. And it wasn't until I was about 23, 24, I really discovered a love of food. I'm like, where have I been?
Yeah.
Mum was a good cook. She cooked varieties of different meals. I just wasn't interested. And then all of a sudden, I just fell in love with food and decided, well, I'm going to go and learn to cook. I remember going down Portobello Road and seeing a book for cook shop. And I remember walking in there, and it was just, I love books, and walking in there, and the smell was just wonderful. Being in a bookshop and somebody was cooking at the back of the shop, and I thought, oh, this shop would be amazing in Australia.
Yeah.
And so they were just cooking recipes from the books they were selling.
Oh,
I thought that
really?
was an awesome concept. Yeah, it's still there, I think. So I came back and I decided that's what I wanted to do, and I saved up enough money to go back to England and do a 1-month cooking course in Frome near Bath. And a job came through there cooking for some German sailors at the Admiral's Cup, which is like, I guess, America's Cup in the UK though.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't know anything about sailing, and I ended up I got the job and went down to Cowes, which is on the Isle of Wight, and ended up in this house on the Esplanade for 2 weeks cooking for 17 German sailors. And they went sailing every day while I was back at the house cooking meals. And, there were 2 of us. We did fully cooked breakfast, packed lunch, and 3-course meal every night. I would stand out the front of the house watching all these sailing boats going up and down, racing each other. And I just thought, oh my God, these guys get paid to do it. I couldn't believe they could get paid. I'd never been exposed to this life before.
Yep.
I decided, well, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to jump on a boat. And because these guys that I was cooking for were just enjoying life, having this amazing time sailing around the world, and I wanted a piece of that.
How did you then get in? Okay, that's the eye-opening part for you. So you got to do that, but you weren't actually on the boat. What was the end for you to get onto some of these amazing super yachts?
I knew I had to go and learn to sail, so I came back to Australia, and I worked on Sydney Harbour for a while, just freelancing on boats, so catering for corporate parties, basically, going around the harbour, which was a lot of fun. And New Year's Eve was amazing, being on the boats on the harbour. And then I went up to the Whitsundays, went to Early Beach, and I found a job cooking on a 51-foot Veneto sailing boat. So it was a sort of a luxury sort of style holiday where there was a skipper and myself. We looked after the guests who hired the boat.
Right.
And we would go out for how many days that they hired the boat for, and I would cook and the skipper, sailed the boat for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I ended up on boats, basically. And from there, I jumped on another boat, went up to the Solomon Islands, and then I came back down to Sydney, and I was still working on the harbour, but I was also working in a shop called Pasta Pantry. And they asked me to become manager of their city store. So I ended up, I took a break for a year from yachting and ended up running a shop, being with about 12 staff. We were making 1,000 cups of coffee a day and selling 1,000 cups of pasta a day. It was pretty full on.
Yes.
And I had applied for a job the previous year for a boat that was based in Turkey, and the skipper rang me and said, would you be interested this time? The chef's left. And I said, yep. when can I, when can I come? So I broke the news to the owner of Pasta Pantry, and he said, I'd take it as well. So that was sort of a relief. And I flew out to Turkey and ended up on a boat there, and I ended up staying in the Med for about 5 years then. Yeah.
I just love the way that you just have that rolls off your tongue. I just stayed there for 5 years. And so were you? I'm just listening there going, oh God.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Yes.
So
yes.
that first boat, I mean, was it was all girl crew and a male captain.
Yep.
He didn't want any male crew, and that was a lady owner, and she was involved in she was a patron for an organisation that did underwater archaeology. So we went to a couple of sites where they were bringing up 2,000-year-old boats.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So they were bringing up fully intact amphoras, and it was just incredible to, this was off the coast of Turkey near Bodrum. So that was pretty interesting. And then that job finished because that was just a 6-month job. That was during the Sydney Olympics. Yeah. And then I went to, I was told to go to Mallorca. And so I ended up in Palma, Mallorca, and I walked into a bar, and as you do, and I just started talking to people. I'm looking for a job. And they went, well, go and see that guy. So I went and saw that guy. And I ended up on a boat. They were looking for a chef to help crew a boat going from Mallorca to the Maldives. So I was just delivery crew.
Oh, if I have to, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we delivered a boat from Mallorca to the Maldives, and that was an exciting adventure. We went from Mallorca to Malta, had a couple of days there, and then down to across to Egypt, and then we were guided through the Suez Canal. We had to, you actually bribe. You have to be prepared with money and.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, you bribe the pilots. You give them.
Oh, wow.
To get the next in line type thing.
Okay. Yep.
And then we headed down the Red Sea, and then we had and when it was pretty hot going down the Red Sea at that time of year, and then we had 2 longboats started chasing us, and we were like, oh, we've got these are pirates. So I always remember the look on the captain's face was like fear, and I was a bit oblivious. I was a bit naive, I could say.
Maybe a good thing.
What was actually happening. And one of the crew said to me, you go and hide. If they come up even closer, you go and hide in the cupboard downstairs. And and fortunately for us, one of the boats eventually just stopped, and the other one just diverted away. They were probably chasing us for a good 15, 20 minutes. And the plan was, we gathered what they were doing was they would overtake the boat, throw a rope from one longboat to the other and drag it under and stop the propeller that way.
Really?
That's what they were doing, yeah.
So that's quite common, because you hear pirates and you just have this fantasized view of, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. I mean, they were carrying guns as well. So, and we had no weapons on board. So it was decided that the next port we would buy weapons. That's another story.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. We ended up in Djibouti, and the fridges broke down. So we had all this meat that we ended up giving away to a community. And apparently the smell of meat could be smelt for days on end. Of cooking meat.
Yeah.
Djibouti was an eye-opener. It could be a bit of a scary place. It's down the bottom of the Red Sea. And then we left there and sailed through the Gulf of Aden, and we were surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of dolphins. That was one of my fondest memories. Yeah, that was pretty special. Like they just swam with us for a long time. I remember filming it all. And then we got to Oman. We decided to stop there, and that's when we found a gun to buy. You can buy them in the markets. And it was a 1942 Len Enfield rifle.
Oh, how amazing.
So we practiced on the way out of Oman. We threw over a plastic container tied on a line.
Yeah.
And we tried shooting it, but no, it wouldn't shoot straight. So we thought this isn't going to save us.
Did you end up throwing it overboard?
We just hope we can go fast enough if we get chased.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So we were meant to be going to the Seychelles, but we ended up going to the Maldives because the weather was pretty bad. And we didn't want to go around the coast of Socotra, and because that's where we were definitely going to run into pirates there as well. We didn't want to risk our chances. But those 3 days going to the Maldives, we rolled and we rolled and we rolled. It was pretty hairy. Yeah, but you end up getting used to it. Your whole body just rolls with the boat. And it rolled so
you
bad.
Obviously don't, Sally, you don't obviously suffer from
no, fortunately.
Yeah.
Your body adjusts.
Okay.
Yeah. We rolled, and I remember we hit a wave quite badly, and the captain was sitting in the captain's chair, and the whole chair just bent over, and he fell out of the chair.
Dear God.
It was hilarious. It was a funny boat, that one. We had a lot of adventures on that one.
So do you look back now, like I'm just thinking not now, but the experience that you had with the pirate, did you look back, a day or so afterwards and go, oh my God?
Oh, totally. Because like I said, I was really green at, my world around me.
Yeah.
I was just up for having a great time and experiencing life to the fullest, but not realizing what could happen. So
no, that is quite an amazing story. But and you were talking about you would hope that your boat would be able to outpace any other similar experience should it happen again, which leads me on to something else. You had a record. You were in a boat that had a record of speed. Tell us about that.
After that job, when we got to Maldives, I flew to Norway because a skipper called me and he said, I heard about you and I hear that you're looking for a job. And I went, okay, all right. So I flew to Norway and I spent the next 3 years working for a Norwegian chap. He was the nicest fellow. It was the best boat. We had such a great time on that boat. It was a 105-foot Wally yacht. It was made of carbon fiber. So it was built for speed. It was the very first Wally built, I think. So Wally is a brand of boats. So that was built in about 95, I think. So I joined that boat 2001. And so it was pretty iconic. I hope you see it when you have wines at the Hotel du Sub in Saint-Tropez in the next couple of weeks.
I hope I do.
Yeah, so the Norwegian owner, he loved to race that boat. So he wouldn't stay on the boat. We would anchor out the front of his summer house or his house in Oslo or his house in Saint-Tropez. And he would just ring the boat and say, let's sail now. I've got 8 guests coming and we would love Thai food today for lunch.
Oh, wow.
So we would head out and I would have to cook underway. So we would be heeling over, but the stove and the oven gimbaled, of course, so everything could be done. So you're balancing, and I would, cook the whole meal underway, and then we would anchor because he would just want to be sailing.
Yes.
And then anchor, and then I would, get the crew to help me serve up the dinner, the lunch, and then they would have a lovely lunch, and then we would sail back. And then he wanted to do this speed record from Saint-Tropez to Monaco, after we just finished racing in a regatta in Saint-Tropez, which is in October.
Like another world. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to do an oh wow count, I think, at the end of this podcast. I'm just listening to your stories.
Yeah. So and we did it. So we had 26 people on board, and I had to cook for them all. We left Saint-Tropez, and I cooked. But all these people on board were race people. They were, they're all professional sailors, including an Australian woman who was the navigator, which was exciting to have another woman on board. So, and we made a speed record that night. So it took, I can't remember, 22 hours or something. There was so much water coming over the boat that there was water coming straight into the galley. It leaked through the hatches. So the crew had to seal up the hatches. And that was at the back. The galley was at the back of the boat. A lot of water, but it was terribly exciting and a lot of fun. I don't think anybody slept that night. Yeah.
Well, I can imagine they wouldn't.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so tell me, this is also another thing I know about you, but I don't know the story behind it. Mm-hmm. So you've also met a king and you've cooked for a prince. Do tell.
Oh, well, the king was when I first when I got the job cooking for 17 German sailors. Probably about day 5, I was sitting in the front room while all the sailors were out sailing. I picked up a yachting magazine, and inside there was an article on the guy that I was cooking for. And he made his money in pharmaceuticals, I think it was. And he was a good friend of the king's, the King of Norway. And at the time, I didn't know that he was good friends with him. So probably a couple of days later, he said to me, Sally, we're going to the Royal Yacht Squadron. Would you like to come? And you can come as my partner. And I said, sure. I had no idea what the Royal Yacht Squadron was. I'm just a girl from Dubbo. Anyway, fortunately, I had something to wear because my brother...
Your tagline, I'm just a girl from Dubbo. That's gorgeous.
I had no idea. I was totally oblivious to this life, how the other people live. Anyway, we ended up, we had cocktails and all this sort of thing. It was very nice and very fancy. I felt a little bit out of my comfort zone. But anyway, he introduced me to his friend, Harold, which was the King of Norway. And I just said hello, and so that was that. And then the prince story, well, that was really a funny one. That was back in the Whitsundays when I worked on this 51-foot Beneteau.
Mm-hmm.
The guests that we had were from Austria, and there were 5 of them. There were 2 couples and a chap on his own. He would have been about 70 at the time. Anyway, about day 3, one of the couples said to me, do you know who he is? And I said, no, I don't know who he is. And he said, well, he's actually a prince. His name is Prince George Furstenberg, and he is a prince in Austria.
Oh.
So I was just like, wow, okay. And he was single, and he was looking for a new wife. So what did I do that night?
Did you say, hello, Sal, I'm just a girl from Dubbo?
No. I got in the tender because back then, 1998, you couldn't get very good reception. So I got in the tender probably about 9 o'clock at night and drove into a passage so I could get reception, so I could ring my mum, because mum was widowed at the age of 45. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, Mum, I found a new husband.
Oh, love it.
And I told George, George was a lovely guy. And I said, would you like to meet my mum?
Oh,
she's single.
Oh.
Sadly, it didn't eventuate.
Well, so you're not now related to royalty by the sounds of it.
No, not related.
Oh, that's amazing. So have you counted up the number of countries that you've actually been to?
No.
That would be really interesting.
There's
been
to
a few.
To come, though.
Well, mate, you've rolled off a few off your tongue just in the short time that we've been chatting here. So, there would be a lot.
Yeah. So after I did the race boat, I jumped on another boat in New Zealand and sailed across the Southern Ocean as delivery crew with a really good friend of mine, Son. And we went around Cape Horn. We actually motored around Cape Horn because the wind dropped out after 23 days of sailing. Oh. It was a bit ironic, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then we went up the Beagle Channel and we anchored in Ushuaia, and we didn't know when the owner was coming, because the deal was when the owner came, we had to get off, the delivery crew, and then we would come back when he got off. So he finally arrived, and so Son and I got off and we went hiking in Torres de Paines for 5 days in Chile, and then up to Buenos Aires, shopping in Uruguay. And then finally we got the phone call 2 weeks later saying, come back to the boat. So we went back to the boat and sailed up that coastline to Buenos Aires, to Rio, and all the way up. And I was the only person on the boat that never crossed the equator before. So I got christened.
Oh, is there a special ceremony for that?
Oh my God, is there?
I knew there'd be a story in it somewhere. Yeah. Okay.
So they tied me up to the stern. And all of them dressed up as King Neptune and his bitches, they called themselves. And a couple of days before, I'd caught a mahi-mahi, off
Oh,
the coast of Brazil.
yes.
And unknown to me, they kept the head and the skin and the guts in a container warming up, fermenting
Oh, no.
in the engine room. And then they crowned me with the head,
Ugh.
and they and the skin was wrapped around my neck.
Oh,
And then I had to confess to all my sins.
oh,
Yeah, they did a good number on me. It
yeah.
took 3 days to wash the smell out of my
Oh,
hair,
it would.
but some classic photos,
Oh,
really good.
you got them still?
Yes.
Oh, those I have to see one day. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So is it a fairly tight-knit, like you were saying, such and such rang and they knew, they knew of you. Is it a fairly tight-knit community of people who do what you were doing and still today?
Yeah. Like, I don't know anybody's last names. We all know such and such from which boat they worked on.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, when I sort of left yachting, Facebook had just started. So that's 2007.
Yes.
And that's when I started to learn everybody's last names. Yeah, isn't that funny? Yeah.
Yes. Are you in contact with some of them today?
Oh, absolutely. There's a great, a lot of my friends are in New Zealand,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot are still in Mallorca.
Hmm.
Yeah. But they're all scattered around the world. There's a few here in Australia as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a great group in Auckland that I'm still in contact with. Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
special.
they still, have all their holidays together. All their kids
Yes.
are growing up together. Yeah.
Huh.
It's really nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's lovely. So you decided to take a 6-month break from life on the seas and swap it for living in a small village in the Abruzzo. I got that right, I think. I'm sure you can say it, Abruzzo mountains in Italy. Can you tell me why you chose that spot and some of the experience you had living there?
Well, yeah, after being christened on the equator, we ended up in the Caribbean for 5-6 weeks. And then I jumped on another boat and sailed across the Atlantic. And by then I'd just sailed, through 2/3 of the world. And I just needed a break. I was living in confined space, always living with people. And I just decided to take a break. And some friends of mine were moving to Italy, and that they were yachties as well. And they wanted to renovate a house and just live the Italian lifestyle. So I went over with them. But I went to a different village from where they were. So we were about 20 minutes apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, found a little apartment with views of the Grand San Sasso Mountains. And I decided I wanted to write my book about these adventures that I had. So I thought, one day I'd like to just pass them on. If I had children, that I'd pass them on to them and share it with friends and family. And I really wasn't on my own for very long. I had friends coming. A lot of yachty friends came and stayed, and we just went on adventures together and explored the region. And Mum came, and some of her friends came as well, and my sister. And yeah, so and it was just so lovely to get up in the morning and watch the village come alive for what they were doing. And I had no idea, but one morning they'd be all making passata. It was just decided they'd make passata that day. And I'm like, well, why do you all get up at 4 o'clock to go and make passata? But they were doing it. It's all to do with the seasons. Their food has been made according to the seasons. A friend of mine came and stayed with me. She said, what are you doing all day long? And I went, I don't just enjoy it. So go up the road and have a look. So she walked up the road, and she was gone for ages. And I went to find her, and she was sitting there roasting capsicums with the old ladies.
Oh,
they
wow.
were just roasting them all and peeling them. And so she sat down and
lovely.
talked to them. Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah.
And my mum and her friend Jet came as well. And they would walk up the hill and pinch all the figs off the trees. And then a lovely lady called Italia. She was 89, and she taught me how to make pasta her way. So yeah,
That's really special, isn't it?
Yeah, I was welcome to a few ladies' kitchens, and they taught me some of their recipes. Yeah,
and do you
it was
still
really
use
lovely.
those recipes now? Is it something that is a go?
I haven't made pasta since.
It's fairly intensive.
Yeah, but yeah, if I had more time, I'd definitely make more food like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's
but the
amazing.
food's just so beautiful. It tastes so different from here.
Yes.
Yeah. The sun and the earth. Yeah.
It does, isn't it? And I think it's coming from it's not broad scale that we have. We get our food, and it's come from a farmer who's feeding thousands of people, whereas where you were, they were just feeding themselves and their family and some of the other villages. So it's a completely different way of growing and the intention behind it. Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, at the time it's a bit sad because a lot of the young people had left the village, so it was full of old people.
Okay.
And a lot of apartments were empty. So I hope that's turning and people are going back to the old ways. Yeah.
Yes. No. Will you ever go back there, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I'm still in touch with the people that own. There's always a main house of a village.
Yes.
And the main house was owned by an Italian lady and her English husband. So I was very fortunate that they spoke English because I couldn't speak the dialect at all. I couldn't understand the dialect that was spoken in that village. So they would obviously translate a lot for me. And there was a lot of, sign language. So I keep in contact with them, but they don't live there anymore. But that house still had the old olive oil mill inside in the bottom. So people in the old days used to take their olives to the house and then they would mill it for them and create the olive oil. And then we also made wine, got in and, with your feet first, squashing the grapes and doing that as well. Yeah.
The sensory overload. Gorgeous. Hey? I said sensory overload.
Yeah, it was a really lovely time. Yeah, nice and quiet and just slowed down.
Yes. Yeah, well, it would have been after the fast pace.
Roses.
Yes. Yeah. Just what you needed. So just changing tack slightly. So I thought, over the years you would have had your fair share of romances, being on these.
Oh, yes.
Yes. But I imagine, again, because of your gypsy lifestyle, it'd be hard to maintain any long-term relationship because you wouldn't know where you're going to be at any point in time. So how did you come to meet your husband, Mark?
I was in the Caribbean. By this stage, I was working for a Canadian guy on his $25 million sailing boat.
$25 million?
120-foot sailboat.
Okay.
Beautiful. Really beautiful. I actually had my own cabin on this boat, which was something extraordinary. You don't get that. There were 5 crew and their boat was owned by Ron Joyce, and he was the one that set up all the Timothy Horton donut shops in Canada. So 3,000 stores.
Oh.
Yeah. So he'd sold it out to Wendy's by the time I'd met him.
Right.
And he would fly down and we would go day sailing and he would live aboard and, So we were in Barbados a good 3-4 months and we had Christmas with him and his 30-year-old girlfriend. And I just went, you know what? I'm done. I don't need to have my Christmas with, I said, look, 10 years by then it's time to go home. I just had that feeling. I didn't want to have Christmas with these strangers.
Yeah.
I thought, no, it's time to go back to my family. So I decided to put myself on RSVP. I told the captain, I said, I'll give you 3 months notice. I'm ready to go. I'll go home in March. And he said, okay. So I put myself on RSVP and Mark popped up the very next day. I wasn't looking for romance. I was just looking for somebody to go sailing and diving with. And then I said, tell me more about yourself. So he wrote me this really nice letter. And he'd lived in China and he'd just moved back to Australia. And I thought, this guy's a really interesting guy and he likes boating. So, we spoke to each other or wrote to each other for 4 or 5 weeks before I actually spoke to him on the phone. And then we spoke to each other every day. And then so from the moment I met him online, 10 weeks later, I'd moved to Brisbane. I'd flown into Brisbane. I'd gone to Dubbo first, seen Mum, flew up to Brisbane, walked off the plane, looked at him and I went, oh my God. And that was it. I couldn't talk.
Oh.
Didn't say a word. I said, you're going to have to talk. So I can't. I'm just speechless.
So was he thinking, is this good or bad?
I know. And anyway, he did talk and I never left.
Oh, wow.
So it's funny,
story.
When
Yes. Yep.
That's
lovely. That's
lovely.
And you had your girls later in life because of the life that you'd led prior to that. And you moved to Noosa on the Sunshine Coast 10 years ago. So after such a long time of living overseas, the adventure, the freedom, how hard was that then to suddenly live in one place and be a mother, be a wife, and just have those constraints? Were you ready for it and craving for it and it was easy, or were there some challenges?
We had 6 years in Brisbane before we moved to Noosa.
Right.
Yeah, so those first 3-4 years were really hard. I missed my friends. I really did. And missed friendships that we had a history of those yachting days and those adventures, and that's what we talked about. And I really missed that a lot, and finding my group of friends that we had similar interests in. And I mean, I met some great people in Brisbane, but we didn't want to live in Brisbane. We decided we wanted to, go north, and we looked at different places, and we settled on Noosa, fortunately, because I love it here, and so does Mark. And it wasn't until we were here that I started making some more friends that we had. And I think when you have children, when you start having children, then you build those relationships with those people. And I can see all my friends that I've made since we've moved here, they're the ones that I'm going to retire with and be with. They're the ones I'm going to be playing tennis with when I'm 65, 70, that sort of thing. Yeah. So, but we both had our girls in Brisbane before we moved up here, and they were 18 months and 6 months old when we moved up here. And when we got here, I said to Mark, I really want to have my own business. I'd already had a business in Brisbane, and I sold it because I wanted to spend the time with the girls. And then I was starting to get itchy feet, and I really wanted to do something. So I thought, I want a coastal homeware store. I really started to fall in love with homewares. And then I realised nobody's doing vintage. Nobody's doing antiques in the coastal style, like specialising in that. And that's when I decided that was it. That was my light bulb moment that I would do that.
So you've just celebrated, Coastal Vintage is what you ended up calling your business.
Yeah.
You've just celebrated 10 years. So you saw a gap in the market. How did the business actually start?
Well, I started buying. I had $4,000, and I just started buying products that I loved. Some were trial and error that didn't really work. Some were that I loved, and I knew that they would be loved by other people. And I worked for 3 months on a website when I could, in between when the girls were at daycare, because I was having 2 days a week at daycare. I launched the website, and from day one I had sales. I thought, this is the right path. And it just grew from there. Within 18 months, people were coming to the garage at home, and I said to Mark, we've got to move out. And he was looking for an office. So we rented a space in Gateway Drive in Noosaville. And he had the mezzanine, and I had the shop down below. And I just opened 2 days a week when the girls were at daycare. I didn't want to work 5 days. I just wanted to gradually grow, and that's how it did. It grew organically. Then we started opening 3 days, and then 4 days, and then I employed my friend Kelly, who's an ex-yachty as well, and she helped me 1 day a week. And then it just grew and grew. And then about year 4, 5, I decided it was time to rebrand. I needed to rebrand. I needed to take that next step. The girls were at school by this stage. And so I engaged somebody that knew about branding, and she did a fantastic job. And we decided to take the website to the next level. And so we chose a website like Shopify called BigCommerce, and it just went bang. And then we ended up moving into a bigger space, 3 times bigger, and now there's 8 of us.
Gosh, that's lovely the way it grows organically, because then you can shape it the way you want it to look. And also you design it around your life and your lifestyle. You knew what you wanted, what you didn't want as well. So that's a great way to grow a business.
Yeah, and I don't know where those 10 years have gone. It's just flown by, and the girls are growing. It's like, I keep saying to them, can you just stop growing? I want to enjoy you at this age a little bit longer. You can relate?
Oh, yeah, I can indeed. So you source so much of your product from Coastal Vintage over in Bali, and you go to Bali a couple of times a year to do that. So needless to say, over the years, you've gained a lot of insider knowledge on the island. So you've recently decided to offer up a range of exclusive bespoke tours to Bali, and they're all around, and you can explain a bit what sort of would happen on those tours as well. But when you first opened it up, those spaces just went in an instant. Like, people went, yes, please, sign me up. And this is just another new layer that you can add to your business now, because, again, there's a gap in the market. You know the place, the opportunities it can bring for other people to come on. So tell me more about that. I'm just so thrilled for you that you've
thank
gone
you.
in that.
Well, I've been going to Bali now 7 years. I've been about 15, 16 times. I don't really need to go that many times a year, but I do because I just simply love it. I get there and I'm on the ground from day one. But first, you get there and you go have your massage and your nails done first. Get that out of the way.
Well. Yes, well done.
Because it is the spa that I go to, I just love, and it's just so beautiful. And then I hit the ground running. I am in and out of the car all day, every day for 4 or 5 days, just going from one supplier to another. And so over those 7 years, I've discovered a huge range of different types of suppliers. So not everything I can buy, of course, is not for my market. But I thought, well, if I could take people here who also do what I love doing, but they could do their own thing, or they could do the same sort of thing as me, there's plenty of room for that, then why not show them the different places and where we can go, and also show them where I love to go to eat, because the food in Bali is amazing as well. And my best, a day at the spa or morning at the spa, and also introduce them to a charity that I support as well, which is the Bali Street Mums. So I met Kim Farr 7 years ago, and she was rescuing kids, mums and kids off the streets.
Oh wow!
And because because they're just they're begging on the streets basically.
Yes.
So she's created a safe house for these women and children, and taught them skills on how they can support themselves basically going forward. And so I said, well, what can I do to help? And so I ended up buying some dolls, and then she introduced them to make glasses out of recycled bottles. So they go around to the restaurants and tips and take the bottles and make them into glasses. So we sell a lot of those glasses. We probably sell 2,000 to 3,000 of glasses a year. And so that employs about 8 women just for that. And we also sell their beaded necklaces as well. And then I sponsor a couple of kids as well. So the boy that I've been sponsoring for 7 years, he was 10 at the time when he was found by Kim. She heard that he had been sold by his parents to a farmer, and he was locked up in a cage at night time. He was working 10 hours a day. So she went and bought him off the farmer and put him in the safe house. Now, a couple of years ago, he was the second top student in mathematics for his age in Indonesia alone.
Oh, isn't that fabulous?
Oh, isn't that fabulous?
I've got goosebumps. That is just beautiful.
Yeah. So she's done an incredible job. So I would love to introduce women, people that come on the tour, a little bit of the story of that as well, because they always need help.
Yes. Yes.
So they now have big functions over there in Bali as well that I've been to as well to raise funds. And during COVID, there was 125 children a day coming to the safe house to be fed. There just wasn't enough food, or mum and dad didn't have work.
Yeah. Oh, what a fabulous thing to be able to do.
And it is a fabulous thing to be able to give back.
Yeah.
Because Bali has given me so much.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Oh, well done.
So the whole idea of the sourcing trip is for people to come along, either be inspired or actually want to source product for their shops, or source products for a project if they're an interior designer or stylist, or just simply for their own house, or just to be inspired, because Bali is inspiring.
Yes.
It is there. Every single shop you walk into is, or restaurant or hotel or villa, everything's so beautifully decorated.
Yeah. Well, that's lovely. And I'll give you an opportunity and we'll add that to the show notes as well, on how people can find more about those tours, because they're all sold out for this year, but you're looking at 2024. Yep.
So I'll have 3 or 4 in 2024. Yeah.
Oh, and do they
I'll keep them small too. So each person can spend a little bit of time. I can answer any questions properly and help them along the way if they need that, and also introduce them to where they can get their stuff shipped back to Australia and how that's all done.
Yep. Yeah. So a lot of the shortcuts that people would only find out that way.
Because it does take you a long time to find product and get it shipped back and all those sorts of things. Because I've had trial and error. I've had lots of products that come in that I couldn't sell, or the cargo company didn't pack it well. So I finally found a great cargo company that packs everything really well and comes in really safely. Yeah. Things like that.
Well, I wish you all the luck with this next new venture, because you don't need any luck. No, that's probably the wrong word. I wish you continued growth in this next area.
Yeah, it's just wonderful.
I will definitely have to come with one day because I've not been to Bali yet, and it's one of those things that, one of the islands I'd love to go and visit.
Yeah, special place.
Now, so this time of life is full of lots of opportunities, and you're obviously seizing the ones that are coming your way as well. What are some of the good and not so good things that you're noticing happening in the middle of life for you at the moment?
I really miss being 35 physically. I loved being strong, so and fit. It's not as easy anymore to keep that strength and fitness. I really miss that, to be perfectly honest. Who doesn't? I'm finding I think I've been in perimenopause now for 7-8 years easy.
Yeah.
I have permanent hot feet. I don't get
you
the
can
hot
have my cold feet any day. I'm happy because I whinge my feet are always bloody cold, so I'll happily do a swap for you.
But I mean, it hasn't been too bad for me. I don't think this phase of life changes. I don't care what people think anymore. Isn't that funny? I think when you turn 50 and you're in your 50s or even earlier, you just don't give a damn anymore about what other people think.
No.
As long as I've got my tribe, and I know who my real friends are.
Yeah. That's
I think
important.
that's really important.
Yes.
And I've got a great partner. And I think that's really important. And happy kids, and that's all I want.
Oh, well, if you're ticking all the main boxes.
Yeah.
Even if you do make noises getting out of a chair now, at least you
exactly.
you're given that gift, but then you've got the gift of really not worrying about it too much and overthinking it. So that's pretty good. What are you most looking forward to in this stage of life?
What am I looking forward to? I'd like some more time for me. Definitely. That will come soon, hopefully. Make some life changes and spending more time with the family because, the last 10 years have gone so quick with the kids. We just want to spend more time with the kids. So we've always been great holiday makers. We always go away and do things together. We've got a boat, so we go out boating a lot, just spending more time with the girls and being there for them for, what they need, particularly with school and that sort of thing. Emily will be going off to New Caledonia in year 9 or year 10 to study because she's studying French at school. So I said, but if you ever need to go to Paris, I'll take you. That's no problem.
Do a quick detour in New Caledonia and then fly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah.
Lovely. So more travel on the horizon then for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if the tours in Bali are successful, I would love to broaden that. Definitely. France, Vietnam, all different places.
Yeah.
Sourcing and that sort of thing. Why not? I would like to sleep a little bit more through the night without waking up at 2 a.m. I have some good nights and some bad nights.
Yeah. Well, you're speaking my language, Sal.
Yeah, but I think for me, exercise every day. If I just go and have my walk, I find it really meditative. Even in the morning or evening, it doesn't matter. As long as I get my 35, 40-minute walk, I find it. And Mark comes a lot with me now. We walk together, and that's when we can talk without interruption, or we talk about our day. We really find that it's really good.
Yeah. No, it's a special time that you can have together.
Yeah.
So how can we'll wrap it up now. So how can people find and connect you apart from looking in the show notes? If they don't go there, where can they find you?
They can find me on Coastal Vintage on Instagram. On the website.
Definitely. And the website is just
coastalvintage.au.
Okay, so add the AU to the end of yours.
Definitely.
And on Facebook as well?
On Facebook, Coastal Vintage 1, it is.
Okay. And all of the details for if anyone's interested in what your shop looks like, the beautiful things that you've got there, or the upcoming tours for next year, or if they just want to have a look at
all on there.
Lovely. Right, we'll wrap it up with our final question.
Thanks, Jo.
If you can look into the future, Sal, what do you hope 80-year-old Sally will say about current day Sally?
She's excited about the future, that's for sure. Excited about the potential travel that's coming up.
No. What is 80-year-old Sally going to say? Well, maybe she is, but what's 80-year-old Sally saying about current day Sally?
Keep exercising and eating well. because I really want to live a long time.
Yes.
I just read an article on Bob Ansett the other day. He's 90 years old and he runs every day, 6 days a week, does his exercises, swims, and on day 7 he goes golfing. He looks 65.
Wow.
He's 90 years old. I would love to be able to be that physically.
Yeah.
That's inspiring for me.
It is. So keep moving, basically, she'll say.
Keep moving. Yeah, keep moving.
Beautiful.
And be happy.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Sal.
Yeah,
really
thanks,
enjoyed
Jo.
having this chat with you.
Yeah, see you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star rating and review. To keep spreading these empowering messages, please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. On socials, you can find me on Instagram and Pinterest at Jo Clark Coaching. I'd also like to invite you to join my private Facebook group, Women's Wellness Collective. You can also head to my website at joclarkcoaching.com for more information. All the links mentioned in today's episode can be found in the show notes. Join me again next week for another Redefining Midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.